Hey gamers, this is Liz Davidson from Beyond Solitaire, and I'm back again to talk about the very tippity top of the People's Choice Top 100 Solo Games list. We're doing it games 1 through 50, and I'm joined by my professional gaming consultants. Mike Kelley, where can you be found?
One-stop co-op shop, YouTube, podcast, all the fun stuff.
And Paul?
I'm over at Gaming Rules on YouTube and Facebook and probably other places as well.
All right, and Jeremy?
In the outer regions of your mind, but also on Man vs. Meeple.
Fantastic. All right, so it has been a long journey for all of us, especially for those of y'all who have been out there watching these be revealed 10 a day for the past many days.
Yeah.
But we have finally reached the top 50, and I'm just gonna say I actually think that the top 10 is the most boring part of the list.
It's hard to push. It's hard to push out the Titans.
Yeah.
Like it's hard to make a push on the Titans. You got some of the top 100s in there, and it's hard to move them. And that's the way it's going to be. You're going to need this one outside of the. There's two or three outside the top 10 where you're like, I would say 5 in the top 100 that you're just like, oh, in 2 years, 3 years, they will have pushed a couple of those out.
Yeah.
And starting with Gloomhaven will not be removed from number 1 on BGG. It's just not possible, I don't think. But Frosthaven will move on the solo list. It will move on the solo list just due to popularity. But based on what I've already played, yeah, it's just better. So it's just better.
Well, I mean, I've been working on the video for the last few weeks. I can tell you, and this is not an objective opinion. No, this is an objective. Frosthaven is better than Gloomhaven.
Yeah, it's better.
It tweaks a few things.
Yeah,
but the stuff that it adds is so much more involved and so much more in depth, and it's fantastic. So, but I agree with Jeremy. I don't think it's going to knock Gloomhaven off the number 1 spot on BGG. But anyway,
I think what's really telling is just to kind of like dig in a little bit. You can see again. I don't know what Kevin puts out fully for everybody, but we have like this little sum of score column, and number 50, which is Pandemic, has a 770 total score, and Spirit Island has 8,400. Mage Knight has 6,400.
Yeah.
So like,
there's a big difference.
Yeah, like the games in the top 10 or 20 are all like in the 2,000s to 5,000s to 6,000s. It's a massive gap. Whereas like, if you go from like 50, Pandemic is 770. If I go all the way down to 100, it's 420. It's still more than half. Like, so the ones that are at the top are, I mean, there is one new game that we'll get to, I'm sure, that has burst up. But besides that, these are games that have like mostly barely moved. Except again for a few that have like jumped a lot.
Yeah. Although I mean, of course, in the overall expanse of time, things have really moved. Like we talked last video about Onirim, which used to be number 9. Friday is down at 39 on this list. Friday used to be reliably a top 10 solo game. Robinson Crusoe used to be like I think number 3, and it's still up here in the top 50.
Yeah,
it might bounce again, right? Because we've got the new Giant Edition. I don't think that's delivered yet.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it'll come next year. Like I said, 2-3 years. This will change. Definitely.
Oh yeah,
big time.
But right now it just kind of felt like this top of the list was an inevitability in most ways for me.
Yeah, well, this is my first time appearing on the show, so I wasn't here last year, so we've probably already heard your opinions on most of these top 10, but I can bring something new to it. One thing that I would like to say is that we're at the top 50 now. We're at the games rated 1 to 50, people's vote. There are a lot of games in this list right now that we're going to talk about that I don't think should be in the top 50.
Yeah.
There's a lot. Whereas there was a lot in the 51 to 100, which I think should have been on this list. So just looking down, again, Pandemic, I kind of mentioned this with Pandemic Legacy Season 1. I don't think Pandemic is a very good solo game. I don't know. I mean, I've never played it solo, but I just think the experience of playing Pandemic solo, I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something there. But there's a few other ones. Race for the Galaxy, great game. Solo mode, is it really that good?
I like a solo mode for that one. But that also has the app, you're right, which kind of muddies everything.
Okay. But yeah, there's quite a few as I'm looking down that I'm thinking, I wouldn't have put these in my, well, some of these I don't think are good games. And that obviously, in a similar way that people will vote for a game and they go, oh, wait a minute, I like Terraforming Mars. I love Terraforming Mars as a game. Oh, it's got a solo mode. Therefore, I'll say it's got a good solo mode. Whereas personally, I don't think the solo mode for Terraforming Mars is good, even though I love the actual multiplayer game. On the flip side of that, I'm looking at this list going, well, I don't like that game, so I don't care how good the solo mode is. I just don't like it. So yeah, there's a bit of that in there as well. But there's a lot that I'm happy to see in here.
Yeah, so just one more question for Paul. Since this is your first time, like, have you ever looked at a People's Choice top list before?
I've seen bits of the other videos, yes.
Okay, so I guess I wanted to know, what was the most surprising thing to you as somebody who doesn't just follow this list religiously every year, like looking at this very top?
Surprising, there wasn't anything surprising, because I'm fully aware that even on the games which I'm looking at it going, I don't think this should be in there, like Pandemic, there is clearly enough people that think Pandemic is a good solo game. So there's nothing in, maybe that was a bit surprising, because I didn't realize the number of people that played Pandemic solo, which clearly there is. Other than that, there are ones on here which, you know, games that I'm not keen on, but you know, there's a few on here that I'm happy to see in here. Even if you pick on number 31, Dawn of the Zeds. I've never played it, but I have heard loads and loads of great things about it, and that it's got a great solo mode. So I'm really happy to see that on there, even though I've never played it.
Oh my gosh, you would love to play that on your channel.
Yeah.
People would eat that game up.
Right.
Do it. Get it. That's so good.
Calling back from a previous video, I'm very, very happy to see Warp's Edge continuing to climb. It's at 44.
Yes. Climbing.
Yeah, if I had Warp's Edge and Coffee Roaster next to each other, 10 out of 10 times I would play Warp's Edge.
Okay.
It's like,
I would say 8 out of 10 times. It is
that's fair. That's fair.
I would say it is a better game. Yeah, it is a better game. It's just more action packed. It's got better weight choices, of course. You know, and you just have more control. It feels like, at least you're feeling like you have, you know, more control. Versus, of course, Coffee Roaster is super random. You're in that bag. I just feel like you have more choice into what you're doing in Warp's Edge. So yeah, I agree. It's just that I hold tight on I love Coffee Roaster, you know, staying there. My big one here, and I just don't know why this. It's not like I don't know why this is on this list. It's a Stonemaier game, but I don't know why Tapestry is rated so high. I
don't like it either.
Like this. It's not just that. It's also it's not just like why, but it's like nobody talks about the game. It's not a lifestyle game, because I give lifestyle games that are big campaign games a pass. So like Kingdom Death Monster, they're like, nobody's talking about it anymore. I'm like, no, because they're too busy playing it. That's all they play. You know, like it's like right. Gloomhaven. Gloomhaven just is above all those. It's an anomaly game. But like most lifestyle games, most people are so busy talking about it. They're not voting on it on everything. They're not posting pictures online about it. They're playing it, you know. And for this game, I am really perplexed. Like, even with the extra expansions coming out, I still don't hear anybody talking about it. But it does go to this. This is where we talked about before. Easy card flip, resolve turn.
Yeah.
Go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's the reason why Stonemaier games are so popular for solo play. So that's the reason why I go like, okay, there is that ease of play. It's beautiful. It's got great components. It's actually at a decent price too. But overall, like what's going on, like the fun factor for me is just so low.
Well, it's up 13 places. So Tapestry is 49 on the list, up 13 places. Now, so, I really like Tapestry. Again, I'm fully aware that I might be in the minority on that one.
No, you're not.
Every time I played it, I have a blast.
It seems really like Jeremy and I are in the minority. It's number 49.
I'm kind of iffy on Tapestry as well, but I mean, okay, so it's not Stonemaier Games' fault. They just don't do it for me. Like, I can't think of a single Stonemaier game that's best in show for me in any genre.
Did you like Scythe though? Like, I feel like Scythe is fine. I feel like Scythe is a game for me that it was like I loved it, and then it like just died off.
Yeah, no, that's how it was for me.
It
got very samey.
Same thing. It was like it died off.
Yes.
There's nothing wrong with those games. Like, to me, there's nothing wrong with them. It's just that they don't have the staying power for me. Like,
they're inoffensive.
Yeah.
But what else can I say?
You know what I want to throw out, Jeremy, I know you're with me on this. Liz and Paul, I'm not as sure how much you love like narrative exploratory games, but like in a nice little like 15 section chunk here, we got Seventh Continent 29, Sleeping Gods 38, This War of Mine 40, Tainted Grail 42. Like all those I would say are heavily based on like exploration, narrative, either written or kind of like, sort of like emergent narrative. And I didn't love Tainted Grail until I played the new version with the updates they did. Now I love it. This War of Mine I don't love, but I respect. Sleeping Gods and Seventh Continent I think are both pretty great in a lot of ways.
I wouldn't have put Seventh Continent within the same three. So Tainted Grail, massive narrative, loads to read, branching storyline, immersive setting, absolutely, incredible. This War of Mine, lots of narrative, very immersive feeling. Seventh Continent, and again, I'm in the minority on this, I don't feel Seventh Continent is a narrative driven game. Turning a card over and reading one or two sentences of flavor text on the card is not a narrative driven game. There is the story of Seventh Continent is you go in there, you're trying to clear the curse. But other than that, it's the occasional bit of text on a card when you reveal that card. There's no overall narrative or anything like that. So I personally feel that Seventh Continent is just cards with flavor text on and not actually a narrative driven game.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I kind of clarified like more the exploration,
right.
Sleeping Gods, Tainted, not really this War. Well, this War of Mine has like, you go to locations and see what event happens.
Yeah.
But Tainted Grail, Sleeping Gods, and Seventh Continent are all very heavily about like moving to the new page, moving to the new card, moving to the new tile, seeing what's there. I totally agree with you that like what happens once you're there is very different. And I mean, I would push back a little bit. The Seventh Continent doesn't have like, well, I mean, you're right. It doesn't have a story. It reminds me of one of my favorite video games recently. I don't know if any of y'all have played this, which is Outer Wilds.
Okay. Yes, played
that
it
doesn't
a bit.
That doesn't have a story. Like I'm not, but like I'm exploring and I'm discovering stuff in this world. So it has like the emergent, like world building, like the narrative of my own journey as I find secrets. But you're right, it is a very different thing.
Yeah.
Tainted Grail, This War of Mine, Sleeping Gods, literally 90% of the game is your head in a book or an app, like reading words. So 100% agree.
Yeah.
100% agree.
So I'm trying to be more realistic with myself about these. I think that my dreams going into these games are much more ambitious than my actual experience of these games. Sleeping Gods, I did not like at all. I thought Seventh Continent was interesting because I was looking kind of like, it's like, okay, how do I put this together? But then it didn't really hold up for me. I actually, this War of Mine, I'd rather play the video game. I'd rather play the video game in most of these situations. And then Tainted Grail, I still haven't played. It's just like sitting there in that giant box because I just haven't known what
I mean, you got to wait for the updated.
Wait for the updates.
Yeah,
wait
it's so much better.
But I really struggle. So for me, there's just something that doesn't always connect with narrative board games. And I don't know what it is because some people seem to get so much pleasure out of this. And it makes me wonder, like, what's wrong with me? But I think it's also just everybody's wired a little different. You know what I mean? But like Sami Laxo has just sent me Lands of Galzir. And I'm very worried because I love his work. And I thought that Dawn of Peacemakers was just conceptually super interesting, but I have no idea how I'm going to feel about Lands of Galzir, and it's going to be like it's not you, it's me issue.
I predict you won't like it. My copy's coming today as well, and I'm going to bust it out with my kids right away. But I do not think you'll enjoy it. Oh, you do? All right, good luck.
Didn't you like Sleeping Gods? No, I think you will.
Oh, no, I've played Galzir. I already know what I'm in for. I know I'll like it. I'm talking about you. I don't think you will like it.
Right. No, but I think I might play it with my boyfriend because I think he'll like it.
Right. I think for narrative, I think people search for narrative. They search for it because they want to feel this deep thematic experience. But those are their least played games, or least played as far as like playing it in succession, like several times. The most plays is what I'm saying. So it's like often I think these Kickstarter type games, the bigger lifestyle games, people purchase them and they don't get a chance to play them because it's such a big daunting task. And also having, as much as people are resistant to apps that'll do the reading for you, they are, they see these big books, Stars of Arcarius, this big book, and they go, oh my God, I don't want to read all this stuff. And then they like, but I don't like apps and games where the game is narrated, or Madara. It's like, I don't want to read 6 pages. And then they listen to the app and they're like, I don't want to listen to 6 pages. Yeah. So, like you people do want to be in the world, but I think they would rather have the games that are quicker setups. I'm thinking of Master Darkness 2 back here. It's just like, I'd rather just get in there, feel like I'm in a dungeon, chuck the dice. Everybody doesn't have to have a personality through play, and the world I'm in, stay there. And I understand what you're saying, because I just feel like sometimes you would rather just play a game that is thematic versus like have to be drenched in narration and theme, like.
So on that theme, I'm so freaking happy to see Obsession up this high on this list. I love that game, and I love that game because my like awakening to the fact that I thought that men were hot was watching Colin Firth come out of the water in the BBC series. So like, I love Obsession because it fits with the books I like to read, the movies I like to watch. You sit there and you can just talk in a stupid accent or like laugh when you get the trashy American heiress in there. Like, you say, I'm good to do bowling. Let's have a bowling event. Like, it is so thematic.
So when you say stupid accent, you mean a British one? Just
version,
to clarify.
My version. Actual British accents are classy, but mine is not.
Yeah, I mean, Obsession is 18th on the list, and it's up 11 places.
Yeah.
So
and that's just Access right there. That's another one. Access, print pandemic game, and not in print. And I'm sure, like, even the designer, it's like everybody pretty much knows this guy by first name. I can't remember his name, but I would just say everybody kind of knows him by his first name because he's responding to emails trying to get people to get his game, and I think that's really awesome. I don't like the game, but I love that people are so into this game and they stick their chest out for it. And that's a great, like, I love games with a charge in them for it. And like that, that's a small publisher that has that, what I call the one SKU. And
and Dan Halligan is the man.
He just has the one SKU, and the one SKU can keep producing and keep producing and keep producing. Because I mean, Too Many Bones was like that for Chip Theory. He was like, hey, you got your one SKU, keep pumping just out the one SKU. And they had a good distribution model. They did one character at a time, right? Before they did the next expansion. So it's like that, those, I'm really happy for those types of publishers that get that one charge. And then they stick around and it continues to pay off. So that's a great game, and it deserves to be on this list, even if I don't like it or not.
Talking about a charge and like just a cool success story. I'm super happy. Under Falling Skies, number 14. That was I think a free print and play for a long time. And then CGE got it. And I don't know if I think opinions might differ on this, but I think I would have gotten pretty bored. And some people said like it got a little samey with like the basic one. What CGE did with like the little campaign, like all the modular elements, I freaking love that game. I think it's a great combination of a core gameplay loop with the dice and the ships moving down, combined with like really neat additional options added with that campaign mode. So
when you just to clarify, when you say that CGE took that game and added all of the extra stuff, it was actually the designer. So the designer Tom works for CGE. It was him who did it, but I know what you mean. I
didn't mean to imply that it wasn't the designer doing it. What I mean is like when the full version came out.
When the full version came out,
so much more.
There was so much more. So Under Falling Skies is my number one favorite solo game of all time. I absolutely love the game, and I agree with you. The 9-card print and play was great, and it was a fun puzzle.
What an achievement of design,
But then all of a sudden he threw in all of these extra bases, these extra rules and everything else. And then there's the campaign, and the campaign's fantastic. And that's why it's my number one favorite solo game. The game is so good, but there's so much variability and there's so much content in that little box. It's just fantastic. And I've played it a lot. And very, very good game. So I'm happy to see it on the list. I personally think it should be higher because it's my number one solo game, but I'm happy to see it 14th for something that started out as a little 9-card print and play. Yeah.
You ready for this one? Two flipping rights. Top 20, top 30. Okay.
Both of which I like.
Cartographers and Hadrian's Wall, which we just couldn't quit talking about before. So that's very interesting, right?
Yeah.
I just feel like that genre crept up, like now we do have flipping rights. We don't have, it's not just rolling rights now. It's flipping rights.
Well, Welcome to was the first one, was it?
Was on the top.
Yeah, that was like in the 80s, I think.
Yeah,
and Welcome
so.
to, I think Welcome to is great with the Alexi solo deck.
Yeah. So I'm like, this is actually a very surprising spike in that genre, which is working well for solo. I mean, Hadrian's Wall, folks, that is absolutely amazing solo experience. Like, I mean, that is worth. Like it would seem hesitant. People might seem hesitant because of the price, but I'm going to tell you right now, that right there, I mean, you get a nice chunk of sheets. So if you're not a laminator, you don't have to worry about that. You get a nice chunk of sheets. You got a campaign you can play. Just playing it solo is just nice. A nice, just 30, 45 minutes of choice. To pass up Fleet, the dice game, for me is pretty big.
Yes.
So,
I was surprised Fleet was as low as it was, because I love Fleet.
To like completely destroy that game, and it does. It just destroys it. Very, very. And wait, is Dinosaur Rolling Right? Is
it's on here, but it's way
Roaring Right. Yeah.
Roaring Right is a flip, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a really good game too. Like, so like this top 100 is very interesting with the flipping right. So yeah.
So Hadrian's Wall is number 21 on this list.
Yes.
But it rose 29 places from last year.
Yeah.
So it was 50th last year, and it's gone up to number 21 on the list. That cannot continue to rise at the rate that it's risen in the last year. But
it's Emperor of Rolling Rights right now. So
yeah. Now, I've not played Hadrian's Wall, and everybody's been telling me for the last 12 months that I need to play it because it's fantastic. But I think the only people that I know that have ever played it have only ever played it solo. So basically, tell me, is there a multiplayer game in Hadrian's Wall?
Awesome,
I mean, it's like I played it last week at game night, actually, because I wanted to teach all my friends. So it's like multiplayer solitaire where you're interacting. You can trade with your neighbor's cards and like add some resources. But for the most part, really playing it by yourself is maybe even the ideal experience.
Yeah.
I will also say that somebody walked by and looked at us with our little pencils and our little rolling giant sheets and was like, y'all look like you're doing the SATs. So like,
because it's very combo happy and it's very not interactive. It's kind of like you're doing your own thing.
Yeah.
But there is like one little piece of interaction that's there, and it's so not it's so not needed in the game, right?
Yeah. And I just think it's better in solo because it's a little nastier.
It's better I was just about to say that, and it's better in solo.
Right.
So it's just one of those great solo games. You know what game I just, it's not on this list. It's not talked about at all. This one here, Roman Roll. I think it's absolutely amazing solo game, and it just never gets talked about. And you know why? It's a PSC game. Nobody has it. Just nobody has it. And that's unfortunate because it's very much a Euro game. That's a roll and write game. It's a full-on Euro game, pretty much, and it's a Terzi game too. It's a Terzi and
Nick Shaw. Yeah,
Nick Shaw. Yeah, it's a Terzi and Nick Shaw game, which is very weird that it's not known. And I thought, like, as soon as
how many have they done at this point? Like Excavation Earth is also a Terzi and Nick Shaw game. Like they do a ton of games, and some of them are good and some of them aren't so good. So
yeah. You just named it.
But like, put a Coliseum on it, and I'll buy it. So
Oh yeah, you definitely need to check this one out. But I just thought about it because we were talking about that one.
I don't know if I'm the biggest fan of these out of the four of us, and I know they're all in the top 10, and maybe it's boring because they're always in the top 10. Well, Marvel Champions is somewhat new, but how about those Fantasy Flight LCGs? Yeah. Marvel Champions 3, Arkham Horror 4, Lord of the Rings 7. I mean, Arkham is by far my favorite. The others are okay for me. Arkham's the top number one. It's my number one game of all time.
And that's the difference between you and me. It is my least favorite game of all time.
Yeah, you don't like it?
No.
Shut up, your least favorite game of all time.
Least favorite game of all time.
It is my least favorite game of all time.
What does that even mean? What does that even mean?
It just means that I've owned it 3 or 4 times.
So that already shows that it's better than the games that you only owned once and called right away.
Because I've gotten sucked in. I'm like, maybe I'll just try this again. Maybe I'm just doing this wrong. Or, like I had someone show me the game, like how to play it.
Yeah.
So I was like, maybe I'm just getting the rules wrong. And I was like, flipping the cards, trying to get into the world. I wasn't into the world. So I was like, all right, maybe it's the Cthulhu theme. I'm like, no, but I like certain Cthulhu games. It just depends. And then I was like, okay, so then I like that. Then I didn't like this randomness out the bag, death.
Of course. Now that
I was like, I don't like this. I was like, I don't think I like any of the mechanics in this game, like at all. So I was like, it's just literally it is a game that represents exactly what I don't want.
Interesting.
After I played it, I was like, okay, now I've owned it enough to say this is exactly what I do not want in the game. And that is the game that is a flagship for what I don't like. Now, different, completely flipping on that. Terraforming Mars is like right there with it. It's my least favorite game, but it has some of the things that I love so much in games. And it just doesn't connect with me at all. Like
for solo or in general? Because I don't like the solo much. I like the competitive.
Solo and in general. Like it's just the game that does that has stuff that I love. And it just is a miss, like a complete miss for me. And I almost can't explain it, but every time I play it, I'm just like, this is so boring to me.
Now, how about Terraforming Mars is 8.
Yeah.
We'll get to Ark Nova in a second. How about Ares Expedition, which is now all the way up to 30?
I like
Would you play
version.
that instead of just playing Race for the Galaxy?
Well, I think the fact that they have the same like action selection is
they're almost the same game. It's just one's got a Terraforming Mars theme, and Terraforming Mars is a popular game. So, I mean, I've played solo Terraforming Mars quite a lot. Never physical, only with the app. But the app solo is exactly the same as the solo mode in the physical game, unlike some of the other things that we mentioned in a previous video. I've also played Terraforming Mars Ares solo. And we'll come back to the Fantasy Flight LCGs later because I've got something to say about those. But as far as Terraforming Mars goes, I do not like the solo mode of Terraforming Mars. I love the game. I think the game is great and I love playing it, but I do not like the solo mode.
And I like the solo mode for either.
Yeah.
See, I'm sort of
way too luck dependent on the cards. Way too luck.
My whole opinion is twisted now because I love the upcoming Crisis expansion for Ares Expedition so much. And that's going back to our first video, one of those things where it totally shifts the game. Now it's a solo cooperative defense game where you're trying to like overcome these goals every turn and you have to build your engine differently every game.
Right.
That I love.
That sounds good.
Yeah, but I also do not like Ares Expedition or Terraforming Mars much solo, although like you, Paul, I like them competitive. But anyway, sorry, Paul, you wanted to go back to the
no. The only reason I've played Terraforming Mars solo, and as I say, I use the digital app, and the digital app started out with loads of bugs, but after about 2 years, they finally, and it's a really, really good production now, is to play it to get used to the cards. So I played Terraforming Mars solo just to have that experience of playing on my own, to see the cards, to sort of learn which cards were good and whatnot. But the reason why I don't like Terraforming Mars as a solo game is you have to play it a different way. So in Terraforming Mars, you'll have these cards that are like, look, this is a really powerful card. It's going to give you a really good bonus, but it's -2 points. So in the solo game, you're like, well, I'm not playing for points, so I'll play this card. And basically, the cards are all balanced. Other people might disagree with that, but let's say the cards are all balanced. So the ones that are really good cost you victory points. The ones that are no good, there's one card I think that costs a bazillion pounds to buy, but only gives you points. It has no effect on the game whatsoever. In a solo game, you're not playing for points. Therefore, you draw that card, it's a useless card. Whereas if you draw the other card, and because the deck's so big, you end up with, and I mean, I've heard stories, and people who played Terraforming Mars Ares Expedition, they played the solo game and they could not beat it because they didn't draw the cards, which affected the climate and everything else. And it's just the fact that you end up having to play a different game than what you're playing normally. And some people like that, but I just didn't.
You also don't get the real pleasure of the game by playing. I don't like the solo goals because the point is to get your engine going and try to get all those points up and make it really crazy.
Yeah.
Like, the people I played Terraforming Mars with the most often, and I don't do it enough because it's always fun, they draft so you get to see more cards. And it's like a league where these people play this game like over 300 times.
Right.
And, the game has staying power. The game has lasting interest, but the solo mode doesn't reflect that.
Except it's number 8 on the list. So what do we know? We're all wrong.
What do we know?
It's clearly a popular choice, but I don't know if this is because a lot of people go, oh yeah, Terraforming Mars is like my number one favorite game. Oh, and it has a solo, and maybe they enjoy. I mean, the guy who does 3-minute board games, plays Terraforming Mars on the app. He's played it like 1,000 times. He absolutely loves it. Says it's absolutely fantastic. So there's clearly a lot of people who do like Terraforming Mars solo.
Yeah.
And as I say, I have played it, and I've played it just to sort of get to know the cards and things like that. But when I see how high it is on the list compared to some of these other games which have amazing solo modes, then I just think that's a bit high.
So can the same be said for Arc Nova? Because I have not actually played Arc Nova solo, but I've played it multiplayer, and the way the solo is described sounds similar.
Yeah.
It gives really strong Terraforming Mars-ish vibes.
Yes. Yeah, mainly because there's a massive stack of cards, and you only go through a small percentage of them, maybe a quarter.
About
in a solo game.
Yeah, 40 or so cards probably.
Yeah. So you're not gonna see those. Well, if you do see those combos, it's down to luck. It's down to did the cards come out or not. But again, Arc Nova wasn't my number one game of last year. It was one of my top 10 games of last year. It's a fantastic game, really, really enjoyable. Played the solo mode, and I enjoyed playing the solo mode because I enjoy playing Arc Nova. Do I think it was a good solo mode? Not really. And I think the unofficial one, which somebody mentioned earlier on, has kind of been accepted as that's a better one than the one included in the game.
Yeah, and it's hard to say in this. It's number 10 this year, Meteoric Rise. It's hard to say how much of that is like the Arno solo mode, the unofficial one, versus the one in the game.
So it is now my second favorite game of all time. I just play it. Like I love to play the game. Now I haven't played it in months now, and that's great because I was gonna play it yesterday. So I was gonna play it yesterday. There was 2 games going for my game group, and I just didn't. I just was happy to play in Sabika. I just got Sabika.
Yeah.
But I was like literally gonna stop what I was doing and just like, I just want to play Arc Nova. Let me just jump in over there, because that game is it's just absolutely fantastic card game. But I feel like that's an example. It's like, it's not exactly Terraforming Mars, but it definitely gives the same feel. So people, if they like it, or if they have issues with Terraforming Mars, this might be the game that they were looking for, maybe, but I can't, it's so interesting to see a game like that just insert itself into like greatness, like there's something there. And I just like when Gloomhaven came in, they're like, there's no way this is going to stand the test of time, I like, this is the next one. I think we got 2 ones that just came. So we have Osorn, and we have, in this one, like they are the 2 ones that are like, whoa, what happened here? Whoa. Like the gaming community definitely agrees that these are the next 2 that are going to survive the test of time. And it's fun to see that play out in the hobby, whether you are with it or without it. Like,
that's interesting, because I would agree with Arc Nova. I think Arc Nova is now up there, and it's suddenly arrived in lots and lots of top 10 lists everywhere, and it's obviously in this top 10 list as well. Oathsworn, so Arc Nova in 3 years' time, I think is still going to be up there, because we will have had a couple of expansions, and people are still going to be playing Arc Nova in a few years' time. Oathsworn is very, very good, and people are getting it, and people are playing it, and people are loving it. Are people still going to be playing it in 3 years' time?
Yes.
You think?
So I think Oathsworn is a lifestyle game that will be cemented amongst the lifestyle games, like Kingdom of Death Monster.
Yeah, I was going to say,
will be playing it and not talking about it.
You think you'll play through the whole campaign and then you'll play it
I don't think you'll. So here's a good example. I was talking crazy to someone online about Frosthaven, and they were deciding whether they're going to get Oathsworn. And I said, why would you get Oathsworn if Frosthaven is arriving?
Yeah.
Now that's just me overstepping my bounds, first of all. But I said, why don't you finish Frosthaven and whatever? I said, or have you even finished your Gloomhaven yet?
Yeah.
And that person said, yes, I have. Now we could take a poll of people who have finished Gloomhaven now. It's been 5 years, right?
Yeah.
But you will not hear those people come out the woodwork and be like, hey, y'all remember Gloomhaven? Like now. You won't hear that. But I bet you there's more people who have finished that game that were finishing the campaign. Meanwhile, all the new hotness is coming in. They just don't even talk about it.
Right.
You know, like they don't talk about it like that. And we do often as solo gamers challenge people on that. Like, don't buy this because you haven't finished that. And there's just certain games where like I finished 3 full KDM campaigns.
Right.
But I don't talk about it all the time. But then when we did our top 100, people found out, they're like, damn, you are passionate about this game. Like, because I have played it, but that was 5 full years, you know, of time. Well, I've had the time to do it versus now we have so many of these campaign games coming out at once. Somebody may have picked that one and played the whole thing. And I feel like Oathsworn, people are tearing through it. I'm part of the Facebook group. People are flying through it. And you take a couple years off this thing and you go back in, maybe they make a full tweak to something. By the time the new Kickstarter arrives, you know, you have a new life in that game. And I you know, you never know, you know, you just never know. And I feel like those are the types of games that they disappear from the everyday talk, but they are in the heart of those people, you know, like they're in the heart, you know, and so, Gloomhaven's like that. I haven't touched it in years, but
so what about some of these
like 80 hours to that game? Like I've gone deep in that game.
So what about some of these other newer arrivals? Like Dune Imperium is relatively new on the scene. Cascadia went rocketing up this year. It's a Wonderful World is making a strong showing this year. How many of those do you think are up here for a long time? And how many of them do you think are up because they're relatively new and then they'll just drop?
I think Dune Imperium is such a popular game and such a good game that, I mean, I've not played the solo mode of it, but assuming the solo mode is at least okay, I think that Dune Imperium is probably going to stay in the top 20 for quite a few years, I would guess.
No question. I was going to say Cascadia is that was one from last year. So like that one, I feel like Cascadia is a modern classic game. Like it's a modern classic. It will not go anywhere. It will only go up. It'll be in Starbucks in 2 years. Like it'll, it's that digestible of a game. In that whole house that we had, I mean, the whole store that we had for our event yesterday, we had 2 people playing Cascadia. You know, like they just popped up. It was 2 women. They popped up in there. It's like, cool, nice to meet. Boom. Immediately broke out Cascadia. They went straight to it in the library, grabbed it. And I was just thinking to myself, like, yeah, that game's just going to stand the test of time. Like it just is. Yeah. And the solo mode is so smooth. You know, whether you like the weight or not or whatever, it's just so smooth. Like it really is. And it's a very relaxing game. Cup of coffee game. You know, I call those cup of coffee games where it's just like cup of coffee, play something real relaxed. And if somebody wanted to play, you can play it right with them 30 minutes later. You know, like I think that game has a reputation just because it can be played solo and multiplayer. And there's love for that game. Plus they play it solo. Yeah. I think that's probably one of the biggest ones, except for Gloomhaven, which nobody plays like one player solo. Like nobody plays one player.
I mean, Cascadia is 27 on our list, but it's up 72 places. 72. So it was 99 last year, and it's gone up to 27th this year. I've not played Cascadia, but again, like a lot of these other games, everybody I know that's played Cascadia said it's a great game. Yeah. And Jeremy, you're saying the solo mode for Cascadia is good as well.
Yeah, it's just good. It's just a relaxing game.
Right.
You know, like, and you have to like the weight of Cascadia, and that's the reason why it's digestible. It's like, I don't know where Parks is on this list, but Parks belongs on this list. Like, it's just a modern classic game. Like, it's everywhere. So if you're ever looking for like a board game shelf, it's starting to penetrate with the apples and all other stuff. It's a $50 game. That's crazy. Like a $50 accessible game that still sells like hotcakes. Cascadia is $40. It sells like hotcakes. That just shows you how far these games have broken in. And they both have solo modes. Like Parks actually has like a not that awesome solo mode, but people love the game.
Right.
And they want to keep playing it. And I think that's the reason why it's so. I don't think Cascadia blows my mind solo. I think it's just a really good solo mode. Whereas Parks, not even a good solo. I think it's in the top 100. Like, it's interesting. You know, that's interesting.
You know what's interesting though is that like of these kind of newer ones that have kind of popped up in this part of the list, for me, I loved It's a Wonderful World, and I loved Hadrian's Wall. But that probably tells you that I just like to turn things into other things, like that kind of engine humming along thing works for me. But yeah, it'll be really interesting. Like, I feel like a lot of these are quite new to this stretch of the list. And I'm curious about which are the ones that are going to become like established solo games versus ones that we really like right now. And will kind of eventually fall off.
Low key game in this list, low key. And this, once again, designer, Norsefjord. Norsefjord is very high.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's higher than I thought it would be compared to a lot of his other games.
So,
in fact, is that the highest rated? Oh no, we got a Feast for Odin at
Feast
16.
Feast
for Odin is fun. Yeah.
Now we're talking about, and we just talked about 3 of them. So that's to be a third one. All those games play in like 45 minutes or less. So there is some staying power. Sprawlopolis, 30 minutes. Like, there's still this weight of like, people love weighty games. So the ones that are at the top, heavier weighter games, like, medium, heavy, medium, high upkeep, all kinds of stuff. But in that top 50 is also games that are not as expensive, and small, and small. And that I love to see that in that top 50 is games that are also small. Friday is still in there.
Yeah, Friday's still in there.
Warp's Edge is not a big game. It doesn't take, a ton of time to play. Race for the Galaxy doesn't take a long time to play. Role Player, once you get that down, 45 minutes, doesn't take that long to play. Like that, I like to see that, and I just like to see that people can afford these games.
Yeah.
They don't have to just go with all these gigantic games to have fun and a good time, and people are still responding to them.
But there's some other big box games in here. Like if we just touch on Feast for Odin again. Feast for Odin is an expensive game, big box, hundreds of components. But I can play a solo game of Feast for Odin in about 30 minutes.
Yeah, if you really know how to do it.
If you really know, you just
really know.
at it out. And
a tough thing for Feast for Odin is that I think it really shines with the expansion. So it's already an expensive game, and you kind of need to buy the expansion too.
I don't think you need to buy the expansion makes it better. But the base game is fantastic. The expansion makes it even better. But there's some people who say the game is unplayable without the expansion, and that's totally not right. The base game is a great game. The expansion does make it better, but is not absolutely needed. There are some games out there where the expansion is needed.
Sure.
Feast for Odin is not one of them. But would I ever play it without the expansion? No, because I've got the expansion, and the expansion makes it better. So I will always use the expansion. But yeah, some of these games are not long games, and we've got a good mix of small box games, relatively cheap, that don't take long, big box games that are quite expensive that don't take long, and then still on the list, Nemo's War.
Yeah, I was just going to say that.
Yes.
Very popular solo game, and I've played it about 4 times, and I don't ever want to play it again.
Yeah. How dare you? No.
And I get shunned by solo gamers when I say I've played Nemo's War about 4 times, and I'm done with Nemo's War now. And the reason for that is, whilst I respect all of the people who like the game and think it's a great solo game, and I enjoyed those games, it took me 3.5 hours for a game that was a lot of dice rolling.
Yeah.
And if it was a 45-minute to 1 hour game, I'd love it. But it was just too much.
Yeah.
Too much time investment.
I do want to be, I'm so glad you brought up Nemo's War. So I'm always like lamenting the fall of war games from this list, right? But Nemo's War is pretty war gamey. Like if you like war games, you will like Nemo's War. Yeah. And then you've got Pax Pamir here. So thanks Ricky, and also thanks Cole Worley for making like historical games sexy, right? We've got something here. And you've also got Dawn of the Zeds, which is a States of Siege game. And so what I see up here too that makes me happy, right, is that there is room for warlike games and for historical games all the way up at the top. And because those are my favorite part of my wheelhouse, it brings me a lot of hope that it's possible for any kind of game to kind of crack that top segment.
It's not all being replaced by Euros.
Yeah, or Fantasy Flight card games. If they just made 50 card games, would they all be the top 50?
No. Well, they do such a good job with them, but then again, some of them not so much.
Well, I mean, they've made like official solo modes for a few, like Star Wars late. I mean, they do them late in the game cycle, so it kind of doesn't work. Same thing with L5R, 11 5 Rings. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting that there is the commonality that all these are very high, you know, the LCGs. I don't think they're very similar games almost at all. Marvel Champions is a boss punch game, largely. Arkham Horror is basically a board game that just happens to create the board from cards, but it's really otherwise undistinguishable from like a lot of adventure board games.
Yep.
And then Lord of the Rings is kind of its own little weird thing over here. Like it's an adventure game, but it's very, you know, compared to Arkham Horror, it very much leans into the card form of it.
Right.
But yeah, they all have the same, you know, might of advertising and goodwill behind them to help them all succeed, you know.
So I was going to go back to these card games and give you my thoughts on them. First of all, I'm a massive Lord of the Rings fan. Always have been since I was like, you know, 10 years old or whatever. So huge Lord of the Rings fan. Massive fan of Fantasy Flight games is just the production values and the artwork and the layout of the cards and everything else. And I wanted to really like the Lord of the Rings card game. Really, really wanted to. And I've played it enough to know that I don't like it. I think it's flawed. I don't think it works as a game at all. And I'm always surprised when people rate it so highly.
You and Jeremy, man, are just y'all have the interesting hot takes today for some of the most popular games in the entire hobby.
And this is a massively popular game, and I think fundamentally it's a flawed design. And we can go into the details later on, because that's a whole other topic. But Marvel Champions and Arkham Horror the card game are very likely both in my top 10 of all time. I love both of them, and it's interesting what Jeremy was saying earlier on, because Arkham Horror the card game has one of my least favorite mechanics in it, and it's the same as in Nemo's War. In Nemo's War, you have to choose how many of your resources you want to spend, and then you roll the dice to see whether it works or not. And I hate that as a mechanism. Absolutely hate it, because I don't want to spend the resources and then fail anyway, so it was a waste of the resources. Or I don't want to spend the resources and I would have succeeded anyway. And Arkham Horror has the same thing. You commit the cards, you put them in, and then you draw the token out of the bag. But everything else about the Arkham Horror card game makes me accept that, and just that's part of the game. The stories, the way it's done, all of the mechanisms of the game, it just, fits absolutely perfect. As to whether it's a good solo game, I've played it solo a few times and it works really well. So the Arkham Horror card game does work as a solo game. It scales well, I feel, between the player counts. And moving over to Marvel Champions, that is definitely in my top 10 games of all time. Absolutely love Marvel Champions, both solo and multiplayer. And I believe that scales well. I still think it's a better multiplayer game than it is solo.
Marvel for sure.
But it's perfectly playable at solo, and I've played loads of solo games.
I mean, Lord of the Rings is the only one that I think is so. It's also my least favorite by a wide margin, Paul. But I wouldn't call it fundamentally flawed. The one thing I would say is fundamentally flawed, at least in the initial sets. They've fixed it in later ones.
Card draw.
Well, not just that, but in general, solo.
It doesn't work.
Was totally broken and like unplayable, basically. But yeah, anyway.
And that's why I'm surprised. It's still very high on the list.
Well, everyone that I know who plays it.
I was gonna say the reason I love it so much, partially is because it's what made me a solo gamer. I was playing a lot of Magic the Gathering, and it was too expensive for me, and I basically wanted something that kind of had that deck construction feel. And so I came across the Lord of the Rings, living card game, and then I realized I could play it by myself, and then I did, and then I created a monster. Right. And so, like, for me, that game will always have like a really important place in my heart, because without it, I wouldn't be doing any of this.
I found really what I found out is that I can't stand LCG games.
Oh, right. That's all.
But like we just said, all three of these are super different. So do you just not like the business model?
So I've tried the app for, I think, Lord of the Rings LCG.
That's a totally different game. That's
totally different.
Is that totally different game?
Yeah.
So
it was going to be a digital version of the card game, but then they changed it so much in development, it ended up being a Hearthstone sort of game. That's very different.
I do enjoy it though.
Yeah.
Then the Arkham Horror LG, yeah.
Worst game you've ever played, yeah.
Marvel Champions is one of the most confusing ones.
All right.
For me, because some of the mechanics in it are similar to a game that's coming, Primal. And I love Primal. I will stick my chest out for that game. Hopefully it holds up the same way it did for the preview. Hopefully it holds up. There's a lot of changes. There's a lot of time and a lot of development that goes into games over the period of 2 to 3 years. So you never know, right? But the way that system is set up, whereas like for Marvel, it just doesn't work. Like for me, it just doesn't work.
Yeah,
and I mean, talk about some of my favorite characters of all time.
Yeah,
talking about some of the most interesting theme and how I hear the thematics work. And I played it. I've owned that one. I've owned twice, and I'm like, I can't connect with this game. And I think part of it really has to do with, it's another thing with those LCG games is just the amount of content you're buying to keep up in a sense. And I think that's one of those little sour points, but I would have jumped on if I really liked the game. I mean, even when I bought Arkham Horror LCG, I think I bought like boxes with it. Like I was like, maybe I'll just skip and go to Dunwich, and then maybe I'll skip and maybe just try one episode or something like that. It just didn't work, So LCGs might just be a thing that I don't like.
Yeah, I mean, Marvel Champions mechanically builds on every other LCG that's come before it. Okay. But just applies a few tweaks. So the Lord of the Rings card game, whilst I don't like it, it set a few things in motion that then got built on. The Arkham Horror card game took things from Netrunner in terms of the actions per turn and card draw and things like that. And then Marvel Champions for me just, refined everything and perfected it. But one of the big reasons why I like Marvel Champions compared to Lord of the Rings game is that in Marvel Champions, your deck is 30 cards. 40 cards, 30 cards, I think. And your card draw is like, play a load of cards, draw a load of cards. You build a deck and you build that deck and you're going to see that deck. And you might see that deck once, you might see that deck twice. But basically the time and effort that you put into building your deck is important because you're going to go through your deck. You're going to see those cards. They're going to come out. The Lord of the Rings game, for me, and again, we could record a whole other podcast about this another time. I'm about to get this up. But it's like, here's a 60 card deck or a 50 card deck. Your card draw is 1 per turn and you have dead cards. You can draw a card for a character that you've already got in play and it's literally useless. So you're drawing 1 card a turn and you can draw dead cards. I'm sorry, but that kind of card draw mechanism in any card game should have gone 10 or 15 years ago. Whereas, Marvel Champions, the card draw for that is just fantastic. So it just flows a lot better.
But, all right, Liz, should we talk about Mage Knight or Spirit Island?
Okay, so there's 2 things I want to talk about. So one is the number 1. We got to talk about it, even though it's a repetitive discussion. And then 2, I want y'all's predictions for what is going to be up in this top range next year that isn't this year. So just for Mage Knight, I'm just going to say Mage Knight is forever my favorite. It's really never going to be as good as, Spirit Island's just never going to do it for me the way that Mage Knight does, but clearly the people have decided otherwise. So where are y'all on that? Do y'all like either of these? Like, do you have a preferred?
I think Mage Knight's an okay game, but the expansions, I think, ruined it. I don't know who designed the expansions, but they totally ruined them.
Wait, I like Volcar. I think Volcar is great.
Yeah.
No, he's designed.
Oh.
So I designed the expansion. Moving on. That was my attempt at humor. Mike didn't get it.
I'm sorry. I don't pay attention. Even as a designer myself, I actually don't pay attention to designers very often.
No. It's funny because I remember bumping into somebody at a convention a couple of years ago and said, so what's your favorite game then? He said, Mage Knight. And I said, all right. What do you think of the expansions? And he said, I really love the expansion, the latest expansion with all of the extra stuff in and the life and death scenario. And I was like, okay, you're just saying that because I designed it. And he went, you designed it? And I'm like, yeah. Did you not know? And it's funny because 99% of it, or maybe 95% of people just assume the original designer of the game designed all of the expansions, and that's not always the case. Anyway, back to the topic.
Mage Knight is my love. So
Mage Knight is my number 1 favorite game of all time, and I don't think anything's ever going to knock Mage Knight off the number 1 spot.
Not for me.
I was very, very sad when Ricky Royal replaced Mage Knight as his #1 game of all time, that made me sad.
What was what's his #1 now?
Oh,
Poplar Marcus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I think is going to be way up top. So I'll say Too Many Bones was a #2 this year, and it's currently it has displaced Hoplo, but I think that's going to change over the course of the next year of play.
Yeah,
I think they'll flip it differently.
I would say for me, we had to do our top 50 for Man versus Meeple, and I came down to that 10.
Right.
Spirit Island is there. It was in the top 10, but it is so hard to dethrone Mage Knight. It is so hard to dethrone it, but Arc Nova is right there because of the cards. Like, it's a very much, how much do you love these card games? And they both represent the type of game that I like. And yeah, I mean, and I went back and forth. I was even playing with it when we did the video. But I was like, what did I say? I said Mage Nova, you know. But it is that close. But for me, to dethrone the king, you have to stand the test of time. So you can't just surge in there. When I see people do that online, I'm like, really? Like, you got to wait a little bit, you know. I don't get me wrong, just wait a little bit, you know. But yeah, that one is just gonna have to stand the test of time. But Arc Nova, just to show how meteoric that is, even in the hobby, it's meteoric for me as well.
Yeah, I think with Mage Knight, I think the reason why it's my #1 is just the versatility of the different ways that you can play the game, and the fact that Vlager accidentally created what used to be the #1 solo game of all time, recently replaced by Spirit Island. He put the solo mode in there, but it was never put in there as much as he would have done if he'd have realized that people actually were going to play this solo. And yeah, it's just the solo mode, the 2-player mode. I mean, Mage Knight is one of those games that I probably would never choose to play at 4-player just because it takes so long.
Why would you play more than 2? Maybe.
Yeah, that's insane. No.
Yeah, two-player. I play at 3 if I'm having if I want an all-day game. Then 3. But yeah. So Mike, where do you sit on Mage Knight?
I don't own it anymore.
Oh, how do we disconnect? How do we disconnect Mike from this chart?
I loved Mage Knight for many years. It's not in my top 10 anymore. I call games very aggressively, Paul. I don't know if you know that about me. So yeah, it ended up being tough for me to get to the table. It's a very long game. It's a game that I haven't played as much as you all have. I probably only played it like 30 times total, I would guess, over the years. So it's one that I always need to review the rules to play because enough time would have passed. Yeah. The rules aren't good. I think you'll probably agree with me on that, Paul.
I think the rules are really good.
Nope. The new ones are great.
Well, no, I mean the original core game.
No, I thought they were fantastic.
Yeah, whatever. You're wrong, but that's fine. But Spirit Island is my number. I don't know. It's always batting around my top 10. That's probably my number 4, I would say right now in general.
Okay.
So yes, I think Spirit Island is a more accessible game. It's certainly faster to play, which for my taste tends to be more important. I can play with my kids. Mage Knight, I did play with my wife some, but it's a challenge to play that with, as you all said, more than 2. But I think Mage Knight is an amazing game. But Spirit Island is easily better than it. Arkham's better than it for me. Too Many Bones, a lot of the ones in the top 10 here are.
I think time has been kind to Spirit Island. I think time has been kind to it because it's had more opportunity to add more characters. And you could be playing. This is another one. It's if you're multiplayer, you are so into this game, and then you can take it down to a solo mode and have just as much fun. Like he said, he can play with his kids, and people are like, "What? You play this with your kids?" There are spirits that are good for playing with families.
And especially the new ones that have just come out. They're all easier.
In the same game, you can have someone playing the most complex one in the game. So it's there's that, and then there's hey, I want to figure out this scenario with this character. Yeah. And you got 20, 30 of them now to choose from.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, so and also both Mage Knight and Spirit Island have, I would say, somewhat similar modularity and difficulty.
Yeah.
But Mage Knight is very much higher numbers in a way, right? How high am I going to kick those city levels up and that kind of stuff. Whereas Spirit Island, as you already said, you have the easier spirits. You have the spirits where they tell you which cards to take in what order. You have the new target exclusive spirits that are super easy. But then besides that, I can play with no adversary whatsoever. Or I can play with a level 0-1 or a level 1.
Yeah, the customization of
yeah.
the difficulty is fantastic.
Some people never play with those too. So
maybe Mage Knight is the better game, but I think it makes sense that Spirit Island is easier for like the average person to play solo. Maybe, you know what I mean?
I mean, I'm very, very happy that both of those games are number 1 and number 2, because Spirit Island, whilst it's not my number 1 game of all time, it's in my top 5 and it is my number 1 cooperative game of all time. So I absolutely love Spirit Island. As a solo game, I think Spirit Island misses the bit that makes Spirit Island fantastic. The reason why Spirit Island is my number 1 cooperative game is I absolutely love the way that 2 different spirits have to work together to solve a problem. Oh, well, you can move the Dahan from there to there. Oh, well, if you do that, I can do this. That's what I like. Now, I have played Spirit Island solo and I enjoyed it, but I find Spirit Island at 2 players way more enjoyable, because you get that working together. And I know some people can solo 2 spirits. I can't. Again, brain explode on the floor. I struggle with 1.
We have a guy on our Discord who solos 6 spirits consistently.
It's just,
and I'm like, why do you do that?
So Spirit Island, I can understand why it is very high on the list, but personally, it's a good solo game, but I think it's just so much better with 2 players. Then again, I feel the same with Mage Knight.
I mean, I would agree, by the way, if we're just talking solo.
Yeah.
Spirit Island, I do love solo, but I definitely love it like 2, even up to 4 player. Mage Knight, I adored solo when I was playing it.
Yeah.
I was like, hey, 2 players, okay. I would never play at any player count higher than 2, you know?
The thing with 2-player Mage Knight is you're very rarely actually interacting. You're kind of both playing a solo game.
Yep.
Most of the time. I mean, I've never played with PvP and I never will play with PvP. But even without PvP, there is very little interaction, especially if the 2 characters go off. Whereas Spirit Island solo is just you, off you go, solve the puzzle. With another spirit, you're like, how can we combo our stuff together? So my first experience of Spirit Island, we talked before we started recording these streams about bad play experiences putting us off games. My first game of Spirit Island, bearing in mind, everybody had been telling me that this game was great. This was going back about 3 or 4 years ago now. I got some friends round and we sat down, and there were 4 of us and the game plays 4. So I sat down and we played 4-player Spirit Island from the rulebook. Now the rulebook for Spirit Island is not great. And 4-player Spirit, so 5 hours in, we were halfway through the game.
Oh my God.
And it put the other 3 off the game, and they said, we're never going to play this game again. This is awful. I went away and I went, why has everybody been telling me this game is so good? And I thought, I can see what this game has. I can see what it's trying to do. And then I went away and said, so I've just tried playing Spirit Island 4-player for the first time. And everybody went, what? Why did you do that?
Why did you do that?
So yeah, Spirit Island 2-player, maybe 3. I don't want to play it above that.
You notice how many games? Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, all right. So we've had our quick run over the top 2. They're there for a reason, regardless of our different feelings about which one should be in the top spot. But just kind of to bring this video to a close, I want just like a quick shot. What's gonna be up here next year? And like I've already said it, for me it's gonna be Hoplo. Like I already know. I've been playing Victorum. I've been playing Remastered. I'm really enamored. And where Too Many Bones had kind of been the dominant one for me, I think it's going to go back to Hoplo based on my experiences. But what are y'all expecting to see next year?
I mean, the easy one is Hoplo. Hoplo Marcus Victorum and or Remastered are going to make it very high on this list, possibly even straight into the top 10.
Yeah, and I'll put 2 that I think are also easy calls. I says Vanguard, it's already 131 when I think like 5 people have played it. So that seems to indicate that it'll probably be a lot higher.
But how high up do you think it's going to be? Top 10?
I don't think it'll be top 10. I think it'll be probably around where Tainted Grail is, like lower end of the 50s. And then this one I think might be in the top 20 in a year or 2, give it some time, is Terra Mystica. Because it just got the solo. Gaia Project is what, 11 or 12?
It's 11.
Yeah,
it's showing that these strong Euros that finally got a solo mode are going. Concordia, Great Western Trail.
Great Western Trail.
I think once more people realize Terra Mystica has a solo mode, once more people play Terra Mystica's solo mode, I think it'll be right up in the top 20, like probably by next year.
Nice.
Yeah.
I would
so
say.
will that work? So which ones are going to drop? Oh, sorry, go on, Jeremy.
I was gonna say for Ark Nova would be an easy slate, and for number 10, it'll push something out and cause it'll cause a stir.
Yeah,
I'm gonna go with a weird game that people haven't brought up at all. I don't know where it's at on the list. Is Foundations of Rome. So when everybody finally has it, that's gonna have it, and they have the expansion, I think people are going. It's gonna show up on this list somewhere higher than you expect.
It's currently 1,133.
Yeah, I
nowhere to go but up.
But that's the thing. Like we're talking about a $200 game.
Yeah.
So
it's a massive box with loads of 3D buildings, isn't it?
So it's one of those games where nobody has access to it yet. Then finally, when everybody gets this next Kickstarter, like more than 10,000 people will have the game.
Right.
That one. And then like maybe after this next expansion, Stars of Arcarius might go up. Like out of nowhere, that'll pop up out of nowhere because of its theme. But like ISS Vanguard is clearly a stronger game. I haven't played it. I can tell it's a stronger game. But yeah, like certain games like that will just pop up. You'll be like, whoa, that game, wow. And it's just access. It's really just access to the game.
Well, Jeremy, just to put it out there, I'm on Amazon. I can pick up Foundations of Rome right now for the low price of $480.
Exactly.
Prime shipping, baby. Prime shipping.
Yeah.
Prime shipping. No shipping, right? Cheaper than the Kickstarter and shipping, right?
That's right.
but yeah. Hey, where's Euthia?
Oh, let me look.
That's interesting. Where is Euthia? Because that's
215. It was just outside. 215.
So that's another
that should
game,
be higher.
I think, because of access.
Yeah.
Because it is very much similar to a game like Mage Knight. But that's actually surprising because even the people who have it are really into it, but it's a tough game to get to the table. So.
It is.
Well, it is that thing I talked about at the end of the last video, the average vote. It is a very low average vote, which means not a lot of people have it, and the ones who do love the heck out of it and are voting it like really high ranked.
Yeah, I think when the new version of New Theory is released, I think that's gonna. It'd be interesting to see how high it goes. But one thing that I'm interested in seeing next year is the games that we've talked about, which have jumped so many places that they cannot jump that many places again. So Hadrian's Wall currently at 21, it jumped to 29 places. How high is that going to go next year? Cascadia is currently 27. It jumped up from 99 to 27. Is that going to continue to rise, or has that reached its plateau? So there's a lot of ones which have risen quickly into the top 100, and I want to see where they settle down after a year or two.
Yeah. Well, with that said, I think we have a lot to look forward to, and I am really pumped about it. I feel like this was a good list, even if I didn't agree with all of it. Yeah. and I think it shows that our branch of the hobby is live as well as thriving. And even like, I wouldn't say post-pandemic because COVID's still around, but after the great isolation of 2020, solo gaming is still going strong.
Yeah, definitely. And we should just remind people that whilst we haven't discussed every single item on the list, people can get access to this list and see what's in there.
Yep. Check the link in the show notes. And so y'all, gentlemen, I want to thank y'all so much. Y'all, we spent hours doing this commentary, and I want to express my extreme gratitude to you, Mike, Jeremy, and Paul for doing this with me. To Kevin Erskine for putting the list together in the first place. He types this in by hand. There are 1,500 games on this list. I just want everybody to appreciate the magnitude of what this man does for us for free every year out of sheer love for this community. Yeah.
Although saying that, Kevin obviously has done a great work. I'm noticing a lot of formulas in here that's just picking random numbers. So I'm joking. But that would be funny, wouldn't it? If we actually scrolled right and suddenly every single cell was filled with rand between one comma. It's like, oh, wait a minute. Kevin's pulling our leg.
Oh my God.
He's just made a whole load of random.
This has all been fraud for the past.
It's all been a fraud. Yeah.
But yeah, any last thoughts before we close it up?
No. Apart from you guys today have been talking a lot about games that I want to play and I don't have time to play, and that makes me sad. So there's been talk about, Dawn of the Zeds. There's been talking about Kingdom Death Monster, which I previously written off my list, but Jeremy might persuade me to give it a go. But the reality is I just don't have time to play all of these games. I'm sat here with Hoplon Marcus Victorium Remastered on the shelf. They've been here for 3 weeks. I've really wanted to be opening them up and get them played, and I just haven't got time. So It's sad that I don't have enough time to play all of these games.
Yes, there's so many games. So everyone out there, go destroy your wallets. Please ask questions, leave comments, argue. That's fine as long as it's polite and civil. Don't make me moderate too hard. And again, thanks everyone for your time, and most of all, happy gaming.
Cheers all.
Bye.
Bye.